grandstand moment. I was listening to his speech here not too long ago. Somebody replayed it, where he was saying either you go back to work or you're not going to have a job, period. And the whole attitude at that time, is that union busting is a big part of the ALEC agenda. Because if you think about it, the funding that goes up against the capitalist interests, where's that money coming from? The unions are the biggest piece of that pie. And so they know that if they can undermine the unions, villainize the unions, and get that money out of the system, then they've got a clear path.
The unions lobby.
Oh yes, union, and that's part. And I know it's a difficult walk to make, but I can make that walk. I'm telling you. Okay, the reality is that no one interest should have an overriding interest that's against the good of the country, whether it be union, and I'm very pro-union, or whether it be union or whether it be capitalist. There has to be a balance there. That's why I say that the Citizens United ruling that unleashed all this funding, that needs to be repealed. We need to get this money out of politics, whether it be union money or capitalist money. The money needs to get out of that process, which is going to be quite an undertaking, okay? But there's no justification for saying, well, this person can put money in, but this person can't. So we just need to have an awakening as a country and realize that it doesn't matter which side, no side should have a corner on that market and be allowed to control something like that. And I feel my union money shouldn't be allowed to do it either. Now that's why the election campaign finance reform is so important. This election process right now has gotten, I don't even know the right word. Look at Wisconsin, $20 million in 3 months. That's Coke money going in behind Scott Walker to try to get Scott Walker to keep him from being recalled. You know how much money that is?
He's getting money from Chris Christie from New Jersey now.
Well, he's also getting support. Chris Christie's on the taxpayer dime, flying over to the Scott Walker state and stomping ground for Scott Walker. And Scott Walker's going out to everybody and going, oh, well, outside interest money, unions, the big bad unions, let's villainize the unions. That outside money's having all this influence. Look what they're trying to do. The unions are trying to get rid of me. Well, it's not the unions that are putting all that money into this race. It's the Koch brothers that are putting all this money into the race. Now, I'm not saying union money isn't in there. I'm sure it is. But ultimately, it's the people of Wisconsin that should be answering that call and deciding, is this what we want or not? Because they've got a legitimate gripe. They've got what Scott Walker tried to do in that state was not for the benefit of the people in that state. And he knows it. He knows it.
Well, to use a football analogy, we love them in Southeast Texas, is you step onto a football field, you better put pads on because somebody's going to hit you. Mm-hmm. And so, this is what you've got in that situation is, you've got to play the game that's on the ground. And is that the way it should be played? Probably not. But that's the game that's on the ground. So if we're going to have a fair playing field, which there's not. There's absolutely no way that the union is putting in the amount of money that Alec's putting into that situation or in any situation. But hey, look, I want to get over to the rally. This thing happened in Austin last Saturday, and it was huge. We've got some sound from it that we'll be playing in a little bit, but we've got a lot of discussion around that in the women's right. I guess the whole war on women and the legislation that was pushed in the state of Texas that actually set that up, and I know it's going to be a tedious discussion, but I hope people can hang in here with us to hear both sides of the argument. You're hearing one side of the argument, but it's certainly something that we have to be open to discussing freely to get the information. So, we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to be getting into that. Hang in there with us. It's going to be a great discussion. We've got Andy Gardner here with the War on Women movement. Actually, you're with what's the? You have got an organizational name.
Yeah, we're United Against the War on Women, and we have two websites.
Oh, I should have read your shirt.
Yeah, that's unitewomen.org. And then we have, for our Texas ladies, we've got wowtex.org, www.wowtex.org. And that has information on it having to do with HB 15, our sonogram bill, who voted for it. And we've got flyers on there. We've got a donate button to help with our expenses. And so it's quite a website. I'm very proud of it.
I'm putting all those on our Facebook page right now.
Great.
Okay, you're listening to KWD Radio, FM 102.3, 1490 AM. Be sure and download our Android iPhone apps. Take us anywhere. We are on every Saturday for 2 hours from 6 to 8. We are the Democrats talking in Southeast Texas, and we hope you're enjoying. Let's get into this topic. The rally was not, while it was about the war on women with this legislative session, some of the things that they have passed. How did that, I guess, play into the motivation and then the diversity of the group that I saw at the Capitol?
Well, when we came together, it was initially brought together over the ISSA hearing and then the subsequent Rush Limbaugh meltdown. And so a couple of people got together and put together a Facebook site, and people that were upset just jumped on that.
Okay, for those of us who actually don't listen to Rush Limbaugh, talk about that meltdown and how that was part
Sandra
of it.
Fluke testified in front of the Senate hearing with ISSA, or attempted to, and they ended up with 5 gentlemen from the clergy and blocked her from testifying. Then when they finally did allow her to testify, she testified about her friend that needed birth control in order to regulate her periods. She had issues, so she wasn't even speaking about herself. She was speaking about someone else. Well, Mr. Limbaugh, rather than listen to the testimony, evidently, decided to jump in and frame the discussion as though she was taking birth control every day because she was having sex every day, and called her a slut and called her a prostitute and said that her parents should be ashamed of her. And so that tirade that kept doubling down day after day after day just enraged so many women across the country that we decided to step up and come together and start addressing some of these issues that we're seeing go on in some of these legislations. So that grew into a group coming together in Texas, and all across the country. Each state did their own thing. But in Texas, we have our own set of unique issues here, and we were actually the original authors of an internal vaginal sonogram bill that had slipped through an emergency session that some people had stood up against, but it rolled through so quickly that people weren't even aware. And then the Virginia bill that came out, there was so much focus on that, and people became aware of that, and so there was a large amount of pushback in that state. And when that happened, people here started going, well, wait a minute, don't we have a sonogram bill here? And then when they started investigating, you could just watch it kind of mushroom on Facebook, because they started investigating our bill, and you could see the dialogue. Well, wait a minute, we have an internal sonogram bill here. We have one here in the state of Texas. And so that awareness started seeping into the mainstream, and as more people became aware of it, more women started stepping up and joining the Facebook site, and it just grew from there.
All right, let's talk about the sonogram bill itself, because for me, and I'm going to give you a pure guy's perspective on this, because it just didn't seem like that big a deal when I first heard about it, because what I envisioned as a guy is that women were going to go in and they were going to squirt goo on their stomach, and then they were going to do that little thing that, it's that special moment where parents go in and they listen to the baby and they get to see the baby. And then, so from that perspective, what was the big deal?
The big deal is the stick that they stick inside of you is the size of a small bat.
Okay, but see that's
excuse me, Mark.
You jumped miles into this thing because I'm saying
I'm going
from
back
where I was, you're squirting goo on the stomach, you're rubbing this thing around,
the cold reality is it's a huge wand that, for me, it's used to look at ovarian cysts. It's designed so that it's a close-up look of what's inside you. And the only way to get a close-up look in a very early pregnancy or even partway into the pregnancy is by actually sticking this large wand that's very uncomfortable inside you.
Okay, but let me go back to Mark's feelings about the ultrasound procedure that he was talking about. The big deal about that is the reason, even if it was only that, is the reason why it was being done, and the fact that it was being done with or without your permission.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's talk about what is the reason.
Well, stepping back just a little bit, when you insert that wand, especially in the early trimester of a pregnancy, it's not a comfortable procedure. It's a very uncomfortable procedure, and it's an out-and-out invasion of your person. And there's people that seem to say, well, if she's had sex, then therefore what's the big deal? We already have stuff up there. But the reality is, it's more a shaming tool. This is an effort to shame women rather than actually. And Mr. Dan Patrick, I believe, is the gentleman that put forth this bill. His defense of it is that it's for our own good, so that we have better knowledge of what it is that we're doing. So the assumption that we are just complete idiots and don't know what's best for us, or we don't know what we're doing, he jumped into the assumption that he has to decide, and our legislatures have to decide what it is that we should do, because we're just too stupid to understand.
And it's back to having control of our own body.
Exactly.
They feel like they need to have a little bit of control over, or a lot of control over what we do and who we are.
Mm-hmm. And even if you go back to that basic point again, who was it, which one of the legislators, or who was it that said, if you didn't want to look, you could close your eyes?
Yeah, but the doctor's going to describe everything.
So what's the point? I mean, if it's to intimidate you into not having the choice of an abortion, then what good is it going to do to do the procedure and then tell you...
It's a delay, though. It's a delay, too, because you have 72 hours after you have the procedure before you can have the abortion.
Okay. We're not really getting to, I guess, my question, because
what's the big deal?
Well, yeah, and I hate to frame it that way, because I'm really trying to figure this thing out from the onset of the legislation. They tainted this thing. I guess the Republican legislature that basically didn't talk a lot about it, but when you did hear something about it, it was kind of described as a very simple procedure, and it was only to say, there's something inside you. We need to make you aware of that before you proceed with this, and didn't really describe, I guess, the procedure and the way you're doing, and kind of going back to what Carol's talking about, the whole concept, and Andy, you had talked about it as well, the idea that you haven't given this any thought.
Right.
The idea that you're doing this recreationally.
Right.
That women, that for whatever reason, and I think that there are, while I don't see birth control